Hey everyone, Stephanie here with creatingwithin.com, and I'm very excited. We are about to have a candid conversation with Elliott Hulse, who is a strength training coach, and he has a holistic approach to your health, strength, and happiness. And what I love about him is his philosophy in life, and he has very interesting perspectives. His goal and mission in life is all about helping you become a stronger version of yourself. What I really appreciate about him is that he is the type of individual who walks his talk. He lives everything that he talks about, and he lives his life as an experiment, and he's all about making himself better and making sure that each day he can push himself to become the best version of who he is. And so I really love that, and I resonate with him in that aspect, because that's the way that I try to live my life as well, and which is what Creating Within is all about. It's about stripping yourself and your layers to get to the core of who you really are, so that you can be the best version of yourself, and you can connect with your higher self and merge your highest version with your human self, and be able to have an amazing experience here in this human experience, as I like to say. So I hope you guys enjoy this conversation that we are about to have, and I will talk to you guys soon. Bye. Hey everyone, Stephanie here with creatingwithin.com, and today I have Elliott Hulse here to have a candid conversation with us, and we are about to explore his inner world. So welcome, Elliott.
Thanks for having me, Stephanie.
Elliott, so I wanted to share you with my viewers, and you have a huge fan base already, but what I really resonate with you is I love your perspectives. You're a strength coach, but you have a very holistic approach to what you do from a health and strength and happiness perspective. So it's really mind, body, and spirit. So you're helping people become a stronger version of themselves, and doing all three together, which is what I feel makes you so different and effective compared to other people who are doing what you do. Growing up, how was your process as far as getting to know who you are and really discovering, your own kind of spiritual side? Because I feel like you're very spiritual, but you have a very grounded kind of perspective. So I wanted to hear a little bit about you, just growing up, how it was for you.
It's funny. I have a new perspective on how I've been able to maintain this grounding. I've lost it at times, but recently I went to a Chinese medicine guy, a doctor. He's an acupuncturist, and he looked at me, and he's a very candid dude. He just says whatever he thinks. I've been working with him for a couple months now, and he goes, "You are Earth." I was like, "What are you talking about?" He's like, "You are just the ground. You're Earth." And he starts pointing out these different physical attributes within me. He points at my legs. He was like, "Look how thick your legs are. You're just ground." And I'm like, wow, that's crazy. And I think back when I was a child, that must have been my natural inclination, was towards just earthiness. I've had friends tell me now, they tease me because I wear Birkenstock sandals, and I'm always barefoot, and I usually have my shirt off. I'm just kind of primal. My friends call me crunchy. They said that I'm really earthy. And I never felt that about myself, because I was always more up in my head trying to figure out who I was. So it's interesting that people kind of can point at you and tell you what they think you are, as opposed to that battle that goes on within from our individual perspectives. Growing up was a challenge. Both my parents are from Belize. And if you don't know anything about Belize, it's a country in Central America where essentially there were Native Americans, and the Europeans came across when colonialism took hold, and they brought their African slaves, and essentially everybody just started. It was just a big orgy. So you've got people that look like me with blue eyes and big lips, not so white, not so black, kind of. You look Puerto Rican, but you don't speak Spanish, because it was an English colony until 1989. So from a background of basically cultural ambiguity thrown into being a kid growing up in New York City, Long Island in particular, which is one of the most socioeconomically segregated suburbs in the country, I was posed constantly with the question, what are you? What are you, kid? And I don't think most kids at the age of 5 are asking themselves, "What am I?" Because it's never really brought up. Most people know where they belong. Where I grew up was you're either Italian, Haitian, Jewish. Uh, Everybody kind of had their place. There were a lot of Jamaicans where I grew up and stuff. So everybody kind of knew I'm a this, I'm a that, and then here I was, not looking like I fit in anywhere. And then when I told them, well, my parents are from Belize, because it was such a small country, and because it only received its independence from Great Britain, like in 1989, it was basically an obscure country. Nobody heard of it. Nobody knows what it was. I remember telling a teacher once that my parents are from Belize, and she told me no. I think it was my 4th grade teacher. She was like, "Nah, there's no such thing as Belize." So here I am. I have no fucking homeland. I'm not from anywhere. I'm not anything. I don't fit in, and I'm stuck with this question mark in my mind and in my heart at 6, 7, 8 years old. What am I? What am I? What am I? So that's the roots of my philosophical ideals, why I think the way I think, because from that point on, I was on a crusade. I was on a search for like, what's going on here? What am I? And luckily I found a really interesting book in the library. I must have been about like between 10 or 12 years old, called Man's Search for Himself by Apollo May. And when I began reading that, he brought me down this path of quantum physics and spirituality and astrophysics, and it was such an expansive view of what a man actually is, what a human being actually is, that I would have never received trying to figure it out by looking in the mirror or asking other people. That it set off some sort of nervous system engram where I realized something. I guess you can call it some sort of an enlightenment, but I came to a realization at a very early age that we're so much more than just what meets the eye. And I guess you could say that I'm kind of still on that crusade now, but instead of trying to figure it out for myself, because I'm very grounded in that for myself, I want to share it with other people.
That's awesome. So it's almost like feeling that you feel so out of place, and being born the way that you were, so different, not being able to put yourself in a box, was actually a huge gift, because you were able to ask yourself that question, who am I, from a very early age, which is something that most people don't really start questioning until they're like 30. I mean, I know so many people that, don't really know who they are, and they don't really start asking those kinds of hard questions till they're older.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. Or when like tragedy strikes,
yes.
A lot of people start asking those questions when like someone dies, or they have they lose their job, or something really tragic happens, or they get sick. Then they start wondering, like, who am I? It's funny, like, how old people all of a sudden are like interested in God. It's like, you're fucking 70 years old, and now you're asking about God? It's like, I was asking about God when I was 7 years old because I had no other place to go. But now that you're on your way out, the flesh is about to leave you, and you're going Lord knows where, because nobody really fucking knows. Now you're interested in God. So it's an interesting thing, and that's why a lot of people say that I have an old soul, because I'm asking questions and dealing with core concerns that usually don't come up for people until they have a midlife crisis. Mm-hmm. And I'm 32 years old talking to 14-year-olds through YouTube.
Mm-hmm. It's true. But I also think, like you said, you're an old soul, and I feel like, that is part of your mission. That's part why you came here. And, whatever journey you started off when you were younger led you to where you're at now, because you're inspiring other people to start asking that question. And I feel there is a shift going on in our right now in the world. I think people are awakening, and I think younger people are starting to question and seek within, because the outside isn't giving you any answers. So it's kind of like forcing you. And what you're doing with your channel, I think that's amazing, because you're sharing your perspectives, and I just feel like you have tons of wisdom. So that's really cool. And so you started asking from a young age. That's kind of what led you, the big question of who am I, to kind of start searching, and from there you kind of started, reading and doing a lot of things. What do you feel now, from where you're at now, your perspectives, for those people who are trying to figure out who they are? I was actually having this conversation yesterday with a girlfriend of mine who feels like she's finally admitted, like, she's like, wow, she's like, I really just don't know who I am. And So asking the question of how do you help someone like figure out, like, where do they start? Like, from your perspective of how can you start figuring out who that person is?
The first place to start, and where I invite people, is to come back to their bodies. We live in such an abstract world where we're so caught up in thought and thinking and ideas and symbols. And everything that we do is really up here. And we've, in many ways, rejected the body. We've demonized it. We've called it sinful. Sexuality is something that is nasty or very bad to be engaged in. Your own sexuality, feeling your own sexuality, feeling your own body, knowing what's happening within you at a level that allows you to experience it physically. In other words, feel your body. Feel when you're tense. Feel when you're not breathing. Feel where you're holding your tension. You know, a lot of people hold, or if you even have it at all, because we've created a situation where a lot of people don't even, not only have they ignored their body's spontaneous movements, you know, there are a lot of people that don't even have any spontaneous movements in their bodies because it's all up in their head still. My invitation, and it's a deep invitation because it doesn't happen through conversation. It happens through months and years of therapy, if you will, meditation, breathing, getting back into your core. My invitation is to come back to yourself. The very first place you can start with that at a conceptual level is to begin trusting yourself. If you feel something, trust your feeling. You know, we're so cut off from our feeling. We've judged our feelings so much, and we've been told both through religion and science that it's, you know, we're above that. We're better than that. We're better than our animal body. That it's refreshing every once in a while to come back and recognize that there's a brilliance inside your body. That brilliance that beats your heart, that grows a baby inside of the womb, that digests your food, that replaces your cells, is not you doing. It's not happening up here. It's not a concept. It's not a symbol. It's not abstract. It's real. Come back to that intelligence, that subtle intelligence. Listen to it, trust it, experiment with it.
It's awesome. And actually, now that you mentioned real quick as you were saying that about religion. And so I wanted to ask you, what was your like religious path and, you know, growing up? Did you have a religion or kind of, if you did, what, you know, where are you at now with that?
I grew up, like I said, my parents are from Latin America, so that means we're Catholic. Like, that's just kind of, that's the way it was.
Yeah, it's me too.
Yeah. Where's your family from?
My parents are Cuban.
All right, yeah, so you have to be Catholic.
Yeah.
Right? Okay, so and that's where I came from. I came from Catholicism, which was the way it was for us, because I've met a lot of Catholics that are brilliant, and they feel a lot, and they think, and they experience. They're incredible people, and I admire them greatly. But the place where I came from, what it was basically, you don't ask any questions, you just do what you're told, and you follow the directions. Mm-hmm. And that was it. Everything was very rote. Everything was very, very schizoid. There was no feeling. There was no emotion. It was just, yes, sir. Yes, sir. Do this, do that. You see what I'm saying? It was very robotic. So there's nothing there. When, you know, if you ask children why they don't like church or why they don't, you know, they're not interested in God, it's like, because the shit is boring. Like, who wants to do that? But that was just my experience. But again, it was always a spiritual journey for me because I wanted to figure out who I was. And I came to this, at the time, a belief. And I guess in many ways it still is, but, you know, science does its best to sort of like prove these things. And religion has been telling stories about it for so long. But there's an intangible essence of the human being. And I came across these ideas when I was very young. And then when I got into college, I came across some audio programs through a piece of software that they used to have called Napster. I don't know if you're familiar with Napster.
I remember that, yeah.
So this is where, like, it was audio sharing, it was file sharing. So I found this guy named Alan Watts through searching one day. I think my brother found it. And he was really heavily involved in the scholarship of Eastern religion. And a lot of these ideas that were Taoist and Buddhist and Hindu. And I sat and I was listening to the stuff that this guy was saying, and it struck right into my heart immediately. And I was like, this man, it's either like, he's speaking my language. And from that point out, I knew that there was grounding, there was reality in the experience that I had. And I continued to study. I continued to look into different philosophies and religions, particularly of the East. At one point, I had a friend who became a born-again Christian, and he was a really good friend. He was convincing, and he wanted to bring me to Christ. And I was like, well, this is interesting. This is cool. I mean, it all resonated with me at a head level. I was like, well, yeah. So I started going to church, and I enjoyed it to a degree. But when I would become a part of these communities, and I realized that there was a lot more talking going on than actual experience, it never really stuck with me. And there was a lot of double talk. There was a lot of like, this is how we, love everybody. But then when it came to loving everybody, it was like, well, those people are going to hell, and, stay away from them. And I was like, wait a second, and then I would read the words of Christ, and it was like, okay, well, Christ says, love your neighbor. And then they'd tell stories about like how Jesus would hang out with like the worst people, and, people that they really hated, like Samaritans and lepers and so-called prostitutes. And I was like, this guy was hanging out with like the low of the low, scum of the scum, and he was just like chilling with them, probably smoking weed or something. I'm just joking, but essentially I knew that Jesus was probably a pretty cool dude hanging out with people that no one else wanted to hang out with, because that's what the stories tell us. And then I would go to these churches, and it was like, well, we can't associate with those people. In fact, either we save them or they're going to hell. And it didn't match up for me.
Right.
And I couldn't find a place where that actually would match up. So I began exploring other faiths, and to this day, you can't say, I wouldn't say that I'm faithless, but I'm not attached to any one particular religion or idea, because I see value in all of them. I see value in Christianity. I even spoke about Catholicism. I see value in ritual. I see value in the myths of the ancient traditions. I see value in the Eastern traditions. I'm still on this journey, and I don't think I'm going to stop until I'm dead, of just experiencing this human condition. I enjoy it. I'm having more fun than actually trying to find the truth. Mm-hmm. I think that's what it is. I've stopped like trying to figure it out, like have the answer. Aha, here it is. As opposed to, I'm kind of dancing, and I enjoy the dance. I don't need to be right. I don't need to find the answer. I just want to experience this dance.
That's beautiful. Yeah, because I think that's the key, to not be attached to things, and to just really explore. And with you, which I think a lot of people who have more of a rebel kind of energy, like you think for yourself, and that's something that since I was really young I was really passionate about. I think it's so important for us to think for ourselves, which is something society and religion doesn't allow
Mm-hmm.
us to do.
Right.
You want to be fit into a box, but then that's where what you said, about trusting yourself,
right,
which we are learned out of when we're younger. Mm-hmm. But you have, in your search, you've been somebody who, you had that voice and you're like, this doesn't make sense, this doesn't resonate with me, and then you follow it, which is the difference between somebody like you and then other people who feel the same way, but then they don't follow that voice, and then they kind of conform. They conform to society and to their religion.
The difference is there's one quality. I often talk about virtues, but there's one that I think is the iron quality that we all need to adopt, and that's courage. Mm. Because courage gives you the courage. It invites you. It allows you. You allow yourself to explore things that otherwise wouldn't be explored. If you don't have courage, then you won't even be receiving. You can't even receive the ideas that might support you, that you could build more virtues through. So you have to be willing to say, you know what? I guess I'm going to hell. Like, I was willing to say that. I was like, you know what? This is way too fascinating for me to not throw a look at. These guys are telling me I'm going to burn in hell. All right, fine. I'm burning in hell. Let's go. You got to be able to say that, and that's in every realm of life. I've been able to. I have a large family. I have 4 children, and I built a business and from scratch and had nothing. And I basically had to say to myself, okay, I might end up living in my car. All right, let's go. You got to be able to look at the worst case scenario and trust yourself enough. Trust that what you're feeling is right enough to say, cool, I can deal with that. I'll burn in hell or live in my car. I don't care, but I'm still going on this journey.
That's awesome. So being able to look at the worst case scenario ahead of time and be able to be okay with it from before it happens, and take the step to move forward in that direction.
Yeah, absolutely. Fear is the easiest way to control people. Mm-hmm. So if you adopt a attitude of fearlessness, that means nobody can control you. It's like, well, Elliot, we're going to kill you. Well, that's fine. I mean, I'm going to die anyway. I mean, none of us are getting out of here alive. And and that's like the worst fear. The worst fear for most people is mortality. And if that's the worst that could happen, I mean, what's going to happen when you die? Well, what happened before you were here? There was no Elliot at one time, and everything was fine. And there's going to be no Elliot after I'm gone. I mean, like, I'm not that worried about it. And if I do die and somehow I'm burning forever, I'll deal with it when it happens. I'll figure it out there. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. I'm not scared. Even if it's true that if you explore these particular ideas, or you trust yourself, or you make some mistakes in this life that you're going to burn in hell, wow, so be it. Like, let that just be an okay thing. And that's the biggest fear. But like taking action in life, like with business or relationships, or just the things that are very tangible to us, look at the worst that could happen. Okay, so you're going to have to go on food stamps and you're going to have to live in Section 8 housing. Because really, in America, that's the worst it gets. Big fucking deal. So what? Okay, so I have some food and I have Section 8 housing. It's like, it can never be that bad. Look at your question. Look at what you're fearful of. Ask yourself, what is the absolute worst that could happen? And when you tangle with that, you'll come to realize that it's really not that bad. And then just take action. We all have this intelligence. We all have the same frigging intelligence. The difference is some people are courageous enough to explore it, and some people will completely ignore it to the end because they're scared to look at it.
I agree. You're absolutely right on the money. So to segue into mentioning your career, because I heard I did hear one of your Colleen, which is your wife, an interview a while back that she did, and I heard a little bit about your journey of just you going after what you want, and that you went through a lot of ups and downs, just career wise, opening your own business to where you're at now. So how was that journey to be who you are today?
It's interesting. Have you ever studied the work of Joseph Campbell?
I've heard, but I have not studied, no.
Well, you probably find a lot of his stuff on YouTube, and he's got several books, but he was a scholar of mythology. And I mean, the guys, when you start listening to him, it's like you're a little kid listening to your grandpa talk, because he just tells stories, and they're ancient Native American stories, they're stories from the East, stories from the West, they're biblical stories, they're Chinese stories. I mean, he was a scholar of stories that humanity told ourselves. We told ourselves in order to get through life. And there's one recurring theme that happens in every single culture. It does not matter. And it's called the hero's journey. They all have this story. And we're most familiar with the hero's journey if you've ever watched Star Wars or the Star Wars trilogy. Mm-hmm. It's this idea that there is a time of attachment and control by your parents. You're a child, you're a little girl, you're a little boy. You're told what to do, and everything's provided for you. And then there's this journey into outer space, literally, where you come face to face with the Father, with the Empire, with the powers to be. Mm-hmm. And then in between that, there's all these challenges. There's all these different adventures and people you're going to meet and things you have to get over. There are mentors like Yoda and Obi-Wan Kenobi. Like, there are people that are going to help you. They're going to give you little tips. They're going to invite you to look at things that you might not have known were there, like the Force. In Star Wars, it's the Force. The Force is with you. What is the Force? The Force is this intelligence that only exerts its power when you let go. Fascinating that George Lucas would bring that into the story, that there's a power that will guide you if you just let go. Let the Force guide you, Luke. Right? Mm-hmm. Anyway, so George Lucas was heavily influenced by the work of Joseph Campbell. But this hero's journey is what we all ultimately experience. But very early on in that hero's journey, there's a call to adventure, and then there's an option to deny. That call to adventure shows up in many different ways for many different people. For me, the call to adventure was the seed in my heart that was planted somewhere, somehow, but basically wanted to grow fruits of freedom and self-expression. Those are the two most important things to me, and I felt that in my body. I wanted to be free from constraints, or perceived constraint, because none of us are completely free, but I wanted to, like you said, rebel. I wanted to rebel. There were certain things that I wanted to say no to, and I wanted to do it my way. And there's seeds of creativity. I want to create. I want to think, and I want to make stuff that's my own. And I do that now through words, videos. And that call to action came in the form of starting your own business. I just felt that. I was like, well, you know what? You're not going to get a job because I'm not going to listen to anybody else and do what they tell me to do. I'm going to do what I want to do. And even if it means I have no money, no clients, I have all these responsibilities, I'm still going to do it. So when I was posed with that option to deny the call to action, I chose the path that I think only about 10% of people take. Because when you're posed with that call to action and then that opportunity to take it, because we're all posed with the call to action, and it's very exciting when we first think about it. You know, how many people get excited about doing that? I want to start this business, and like when they're telling you about it, they're like, yeah, they're all excited. They're showing you stuff and charts, and like they've got it all planned out. And then it's like, okay,
Time to do it.
time to do it. And it's like, well, wait a second. And then you talk to them 2 months later, and it's like, so what'd you do? Well, you know, didn't really work out, or yeah, I'm working on it. Oh, how about this one? I'm waiting until I have the plans all set up. What they're doing is they're denying the call to action. Literally every single time. And this is how you know you're making the right choice in your call to action, is if you look at all of the options and they look completely wrong. Like if you look at that call to action and you're like, boy, that looks like it doesn't make any sense whatsoever. Like that could never work out. That's the one you got to go on. That's it. That's Luke Skywalker going against the Empire. That's the one. See, the thing is that we've been conditioned out of that to believe that, well, you know, you go to college and you get a good job and, you know, you want that well-trodden path. You want to follow that, the path that everyone else has taken and society has set up for you, like a good little boy and a good little girl. And then logic would tell you that, well, that's the one that you should go on. Everyone has told you, and if you add up the numbers, 2 + 2 = 4 if you go that way. But over here, 2 + 2 = 947. And it's like, wait, that doesn't make any fucking sense. The one that doesn't make sense, that's your call to action. That's the one you have to go on. And that's what happened to me. I came to that crossroads, and it was like, okay, this makes sense, but I don't really want that. My heart, see, this is why I want people to get back in touch with their bodies. My heart said no. My head said yes, but my heart was like, nah, bro. And this one, my head was like, no, dude, that doesn't make any sense. But my heart was like, yeah, that's the one. And I took that chance. And I knew that there was a possibility, because there always is, of failure. I mean, but I was lucky enough to have heard someone say what I just said a couple minutes ago. Elliott, what is the worst that could happen? And for me, the worst that could happen was, and I already had it planned out, I was going to end up picking oranges with the migrant workers, because there's a lot of migrant work here in Florida, because I wasn't going back to a job. I was going to pick oranges with the migrant workers and live in my car. And really in my mind, I was like, can I deal with that? Like, this shit doesn't work out. Can I go and pick oranges for a living? Like day labor. And I'll live in my car? Yeah, I can handle that. And then I went.
Wow. See, that's powerful,
though. That's the most important part. That everything else after that doesn't matter nearly as much.
No, because
it all happens.
It comes together, the synchronicity of it all. And that's beautiful, and that's what I want people to be able to grasp with this. It's really like being able to merge the heart and mind, and allowing the heart to lead the mind, which is the most difficult, and which ties in with you talking about courage, having the courage to follow through, to listen to your heart and be in touch with your body. This is awesome. Yeah, I love that you walk your talk, and that you really are all about following your gut and really pursuing, like listening to that voice, which is your spirit, your intuition that's connected, to everything that is, despite no matter how scary it is. And that's the biggest example that I feel that you give, no matter how much, we talk and things like that. It's just an energy that people can read off. And the fact that you live your talk is the most powerful gift that you give back to people as far as what you teach.
This is kind of where I lose people, and this is going to sound strange. The biggest curse that I have against my message right now, the biggest deterrent to my message being more powerful, is the fact that everything's working out for me. Because I want you to understand that I would have kept going, and that you should keep going, even if the shit doesn't work out. Because you can follow your heart, and you should follow your heart, but it might not end up the way you want it to, and it might not end up the way the world wants it to work out for you. If I were to be in a more destitute position, things, when I say work out, I mean physically, it's working out for me. But if it didn't, my responsibility is to still continue following the heart, and your responsibility is to still continue following the heart. You might not have a lot of nice things. You might not be able to have an iPhone. You might not be able to go out with your friends and eat dinner every weekend night. You might not live in a nice neighborhood. You might have old clothes. You might not have very many friends. Your family might reject you. But you still have a responsibility to do it. You still have to do it. And you got to wrap your mind around that also, because the minute you start seeing those things that you're attached to slip through your fingers, you start saying, oh no, I made a mistake. Like, I'm losing my family, I'm losing my friends, I don't have any money, things are difficult, and you start going, and it's very quick and very easy to go back.
Yeah.
Okay, this was a mistake, and that's what you'll say. This was a mistake, and then all the people who said you shouldn't have followed your heart, you're going to say, yeah, you know what, you're right, I shouldn't have followed my heart. Oh my God, thank you so much for bringing me back, taking me back into the matrix. Sometimes it's going to be, a lot of times it's going to be difficult out there, but you still have to go, because now two things will happen based on your choice. If you do go and you do suffer those consequences, look at Jesus. They killed him, of course. And a lot of people like to use him as an example. It's like, remember that guy, like, he went down that path that we're talking about right now, and he was willing. He said, yeah, you know what? They're going to kill me. He knew they were going to kill him. So there's a lot of power that comes to those who are willing to take that sacrifice, in the form of the inspiration that you will end up shedding on other people. See, the reason why Jesus is so inspiring is because, like, he didn't give a fuck. He was like, yeah, I'm so passionate that they're going to kill me, and that's okay. I'm beyond this. I can get over this. That's a lot of the magic behind the resurrection. Is like, yeah, kill me, but you can't really kill me. And if we do the thing that's happening in our heart, the same sort of inspiration that a character, mythological or real, doesn't matter, was able to do for millions of people throughout the world, you will do within your sphere of influence. There may only be one person that knows of your story, but that's good enough, because you planted a seed, a pure seed in someone's heart that allows them now to take that inspiration. And you have no idea the offspring of your choice 2-3 generations from now, because you were willing to be courageous enough to take your heart to your death. Okay, so and we have to become very detached from these results. We have to realize that, look, you spoke about reincarnation when you were earlier. I'm going to die. You're going to die. We're all going to die. What are you leaving behind? Okay? If you go down that route, trust me, you're leaving behind a very powerful, potent, and positive spiritual seed that will enhance the world, because you followed your heart. You did what God was telling you to do. That's if you go down this road. Know that it might not be pretty. If you go down this road because you backed up, say you tried it, didn't work out, scared, I'm going back. Thank you guys for taking me back. Now, with every pain and experience, there's a logical, we use our brains, we use logic to affirm our decision, right? You got to keep affirming your decision over here. It's a lot more difficult. When you come back over here and now you have a warm place to live, you're going to start affirming your decision. You know what? It was right. Good thing I came back. Boy, listening to your heart's really stupid. Oh my God, you should never do that. Look at what happened to me. I was living in my car. That's horrible. Now I'm back in the machine. I'm back in the matrix. I'm comforted now, right? I've got the comfort of society.
Security.
Yes. And now you're going to pass that story. I was going to say lie, but maybe it's not a lie. I don't know. I can't judge. But now you're going to pass that story on to other people. You're also planting seeds over here, but you're planting seeds of a less evolved nature. You're planting fearful seeds. Over here, you're planting seeds of courage. Over here, you're planting fearful seeds. So you're going to do the same thing to your children, and you're going to do the same thing to your friends. You're going to do the same thing to your siblings. When they want to go on that path, you're not going to support them. You're going to say, bad idea, don't do it. I tried it, it doesn't work. How many times do you hear that? It doesn't work.
Yeah.
It didn't work because you didn't want it to work. You didn't let it work. And now you're spreading seeds of evil, if you will.
Yeah, no, but and that's, I think, how our society, I think that we function from two energies, is either love or fear. And that's why you have also a lot of parents who sometimes really want to force their kids to go down one route, and, the safe route. Or, they may be very creative. Like I had my uncle and my cousin, she was really, really good in art, but he's very old school, and he didn't allow her to pursue her art, which now in day and age, and this was like, I mean, we're talking about 15 years ago, she would have been great because graphic designing and with the movies and all that blew up. But he didn't allow her to follow her path because he was like, no, that's not going to make you any money. You got to go. So so it's almost like you don't allow yourself to be who you are. So you conform. And now she's living, but she's not really a full version of who she is because she has, parts of society and what her parents wanted her to be. And I think that, you did make a really good point as far as like, if you do follow your heart, you have to understand that everything's not always going to work out and be great, because that's the challenge of it. There's growth coming in. You're going to have obstacles, and it's in detaching yourself from the outcome, enjoying the process, and not, having to go and but not being so set on it has to be this way. Because I think how you talked about, the force, which for me is, the universal energy. Your higher self is always working with you. But it's what you say. You have to have the courage to follow it. And even when it seems like things aren't going right, they are. You just can't see it at the moment, which is but the way that you approach things, you have that courage already that was built in from the beginning, and you came in with that energy. So you're already processing, okay, if this is the worst that's going to happen, well, then I can deal with it. And so that thinking allows you to move forward, in your path. And so because I know that even though where you're at today, you're saying that, oh, I don't want my message to get messed up because things are working out for you. But it's not that, I'm sure, I don't know your whole journey, but I know that it wasn't super peachy. Everything didn't just work out. You had a bunch of obstacles and you had a lot of hard times. But you are where you are today. And the reason that things are working out is because you did have that courage, and because you're following that voice, which you're merging, basically, it's your higher self with your human self. That's what I like to call it. And bringing heaven on earth. And so I think your message is perfect, because the reason that things are working out for you is because you did that. It may not, I think sometimes that what it is, that things won't work out exactly the way you imagine, because the thing is, we attach ourselves to a picture, but it's the essence that you'll always get the essence of it. You just have to let go of your rules and of how it should be, because it'll always be better than what you think. And sometimes when we attach ourselves, we limit ourselves.
Oh, totally. Yeah, absolutely. Then the challenge is they still arise, because the challenge now is, what kind of story do you tell yourself when you're in a new situation? I literally have been rebirthed, in a spiritual way. It's like, I'm not the same Elliott that got me here. And I literally had to let go of, kill, if you will, and then be resurrected in a brand new Elliott so that I can deal with the new life. And this is constantly happening to us all the time. Most of my questions come from young men that are about 20 to 23 years old. That's the first time you have to do it in our society, because mommy's not there anymore. So you moved out because it's college. You moved out to go to a new, live in an apartment. You moved out with your girlfriend, and it's like, yeah, guess what, boy? You're not a baby anymore. Now you can't even be the Bob that you were yesterday. You literally have to die to that version of yourself and be born again. I mean, that tale of rebirth is ancient as well. I mean, look at the mythical creature. What do they call it?
The phoenix.
The phoenix.
Yeah.
Every day, burns and rises, burns and rises, burns and rises.
Yeah, and I think, and that's, I think, with what you're doing, and I feel like with Creating Within is a message as well. It's about getting that mindset of really working within and making yourself a priority. You are your biggest project, like making yourself that better version each day. Because to really find out who you are, because what's the purpose of this existence if not to really figure out who you are? Because I feel like we all have our own individual blueprint, and you're not going to know who that person is unless you have the courage to really figure out and take the journey within. But so talking about, you did say your fans, so I want to get into a little more. I know things that people are very interested in. I know big things is relationships. that, it's a big thing for a lot of people. You've been married for how long?
Oh, I should know, right? I think 11 years.
It's a long time. You guys met in high school, is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay. And you have 3 kids?
4.
4 kids. Okay. So I know I've seen a couple of your videos and giving advice to guys on different topics when it comes to relationships and things like that. So for you, what's made your relationship so strong as far as your marriage? Because you guys have been together for a long time. It's obviously not gonna be all peaches. There's always stuff in relationships, but you seem like you have a huge, strong bond, and you're very family oriented. So what do you say is kind of like a key? I don't think marriage is for everyone, and there's so many different things, but for those who want to find that one and want to have like a good marriage and a good relationship that's kind of evolved, and you're kind of working together. From your experience, what do you think? What's been your experience, your journey?
We don't own each other. And that's easy. It's very easy to swallow on a surface level. But that means whatever the spirit in her guides her to do, I can't interfere with it. And she trusts that in me too. She allows me to be everything that I'm allowed to be. I think the biggest problem with relationships is that people think that they own the person that they're in a relationship with. They think that like the way they feel about the actions the other person takes is more important than allowing that person to be their true self. Mm-hmm. Because it's very easy to sit here and talk all this shit about, trusting your heart. But wait a second. What happens when your kids want to trust their heart? Oh, and it's nothing like what you wanted. What happens when your wife wants to trust her heart? And it's like, yeah, you know what? But that has nothing to do with what my plans were. We've had this understanding from a very long time. I think we've had these conversations when we were like 16 years old.
Really? Oh.
Yeah. Because my highest... the thing that I've always wanted more, the thing that I hold dear to me more than any other is freedom. How can you have freedom in marriage? Marriage is slavery in many ways. But if you approach it from the way that we've chosen to approach it, there's this level of respect that allows each other to be the strongest versions of ourselves, regardless of what the other person wants. Now, this is easier said than done because we are both very experienced and both very grounded individuals. So a lot of the behaviors that most people would take would be completely hysterical. This woman keeps, every weekend she drinks and has sex with 4 men. It was like, but I'm telling you, that's probably not what her heart's telling her to do. It's probably a very ungrounded expression of sexuality. Now, love is a totally different story. So I'm not attached, although I have preferences and she has preferences about how we would individually how we would individually like to see our lives turn out. Mm-hmm. And we happen to be on the same page, so it seems to work out really well. We're not attached to forcing one another to do what the other wants to do. Very, very important. And whatever that ends up looking like, I have to say, if I believe that this is the grounded spirit in you, this is happening through you, and I can sense that, then you need to go. You need to do that. And the same respect is afforded towards me. A lot of people have a very difficult time understanding that because they think it sounds like they think it sounds very pornographic, like you're going to go and end up just taking all types of hysterical action. When really, it's probably the most
involved,
respectful thing that you can do for your significant other.
And it's the hardest, and I think that's what I guess I won't use the word evolved, but I think a more conscious awareness kind of relationship, which is allowing each other to be, as you said, the best version of yourselves. And I think relationships should enhance you and should make you better. And a lot of times it takes away from us because what I have come to through my observations and my own experiences is that most people can't generate and sustain their own energy. So what happens is when people come together in relationships, they're getting their energy, which should be coming from their own connection with each other. And so there's always this power struggle and resistance, and which is why people have so many issues with relationship. And that's why the inner work is so important. You got to get yourself together. Because when you're good, then you can find somebody else who's good within them, and then, you know, work from there.
And then you work together.
Mm-hmm.
You work together from a grounded, mature place. Most people aren't working together from a grounded, mature place. They're working from an abstract, hysterical place. Although they may seem like normal, healthy adults, it's really not the case.
I agree. What do you think about dating? As far as before you can, I guess how do I phrase this? Like, in order to get in a serious relationship or to find that partner, do you think, you know, casual dating and having experiences of just dating different people and getting to know different personalities to be able to help yourself, your own growth? What do you think about that? Like,
Well, I don't judge any experience whatsoever. I think every experience is essential to your growth.
mm-hmm.
So I would say have as many experiences as you possibly can. Granted that each experience adds a level of wisdom to your journey. You know, you could keep having the same experience over and over again,
Yeah.
and be getting nowhere. And it's just like, you know, you're just addicted to this experience. And look, if you're okay with having that experience over and over and over again, and you're just like, hey, this is my life, I'm cool, I'm fine, I sleep well at night, then keep having it. And that's fine. That's okay. But if you keep having the same experience over and over and over again, and you're dissatisfied with it, it means you're not learning anything from it. So you had better off just stopping and going within in order to figure out, well, why do I keep having this experience? Or next time you have that experience, stop and say, okay, it's happening again. What are the elements of this experience? Why am I going through this once again? And what can I learn so that I can evolve? Now, I know that's a very broad answer to a specific question you're asking about dating, but that's the way it is. If you go and date 50 men, well, it's great. Those 50 experiences, what did you gain from that besides sex? Do you see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
At the end of those 50 men, there should be a level of wisdom that comes and supports you in becoming a stronger version of yourself. You may not need to go through 50. You might be able to do it through 1 or 2.
Right.
You know, everybody's completely different. But in my estimation, there should be no judgment placed on an individual's journey and the experiences that they need to have, granted that those experiences add wisdom, because as they grow, we all grow. Otherwise, you're just like reincarnation. You're just living that life over again. Haven't you been here before? It's like deja vu.
With your wife, since you guys met when you were 16, wow. I guess, I mean, your relationship probably has transformed over time. But what would you say now with where you're at and looking back at your journey that you love the most about her? Like, how did you know that you knew you were in love and you're like, this is the person that I want to spend the rest of my life with?
So she wasn't my only experience,
yeah,
right?
Of course.
So then you have to have contrast. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, you don't know. You need contrast. You need contrast so that you have perspective.
Yeah.
Of all of my experiences, she was the one that never nagged me. If you want to push a man away, he might stay, but he will resent you if you nag him. She never nagged me, and she never tried to control me, and that's why she got me. Do you see? There are other women that and experiences that were I sensed a bit of nagging. I sensed a bit of expectation and controlling, and I never really got that from her. And that's why I was like, well,
it goes back to your freedom thing too.
Right. If I'm going to build this life with someone, right? I wanted children. I've always wanted children. If I'm going to have children and I'm going to build this particular story of a life, because like you said, not everyone needs to have children. Not everyone needs to get married. Not everyone has to follow that route. But there was a longing in me, I guess, simply because, you know, I come from a big family and I come from a lineage of big families. My dad comes from, 12 kids. So it was just in me. I knew I wanted to have lots of children. So I figured, well, this is the adventure I'm going to go on. It had better be with someone that is going to allow me to uphold my most important value, which is freedom. And I always felt free around her. She always allowed me to feel free. So I was like, hey, this is going to work. And she is the reason why even my business works the way it does, and my life works the way it was. So many people look at me and they're like, you're so lucky. Like everything is so cool. And I'm like, yeah, damn right. My life is really freaking cool. But I tell you what, if I had the wrong woman, it would have not worked out this way. She allowed me to make lots of mistakes. She allowed me to literally put us in very vulnerable positions where, you know, I could have gotten a stable job, but she never made me. She's like, I know that you want to do this, and I have your children. We have no food, but I trust you. Go. And I knew at that point that I made the right decision by being with this woman.
It's awesome. That's beautiful, because that's I think it's a rarity in the sense that I don't think so many people get to experience it, not because it's not possible, but just because I believe that everything in life is about energy and vibration, and it's where you're at. But being able to support you like that, and so it goes into being able to trust and really be able to see the other person for who they are, and not control, which is what we try to do. It's a lot of control in relationships. And what about fatherhood for you? How has that been when you became a father the first time, your first child?
There's a saying I once heard that that when the baby comes, a man is not yet a father. And I sense that. You're really not a father. There's a baby there, and now it's basically your woman and the baby, and you're kind of like on the outskirts. You're an auxiliary piece of the pie now. At one point, it was you and your woman. And this is important for all, you know, if any of you guys are watching this. It's you and your woman. And you and your woman come together, you get married, you love each other, you're all huggy and kissy, and you're smooching, and you have sex, and there comes a baby. You know, so she's pregnant, she's got the baby, but there comes a point during the pregnancy, you start noticing this during the pregnancy, where she balls up with the baby, life is happening in her, and there ends up being a separation between the two. You're not here anymore. Literally, like, try to hug your wife when she's pregnant with the baby. It balls up, and there's a distance between you and her. She's over here, you're here, and there's this big freaking ball between you. That is a metaphor for what you can expect for at least the next year, maybe 3. You are no longer with your wife. You are an auxiliary player. This has just been my experience. And I wish someone told me this at that particular time, because a woman needs to go in. She literally has to recede her energy from the world and go into that which is growing inside her. It is the most potent, powerful, and important work that a human being can do. How can she be making love to you and keeping all of the external situation in order? In other words, like making you happy, making sure that you get what you need, making sure that you're coddled because now you're alone. When she's growing a baby inside her, you gotta give her that space. You gotta literally be like, cool, I know what's going on. Trust me, guys. I've done this 4 times. The first time, I didn't know what was going on. The first time, I was like, you know, you get pregnant, and like it's like I don't exist anymore. And I mean, we had a rough time during the first pregnancy, and like the first year of my oldest daughter. We had a rough time because I didn't know. Nobody warned me that your wife is going bye-bye for a little while, dude. That's it. She's leaving you, and that's okay, because just what we spoke about before, you have to give her room to be the strongest version of herself. And the strongest version of a woman, and of course this is going to sound sexist, sorry, but the strongest version of a woman is when she's pregnant and caring for a baby. There is no more important work that she could possibly do. You know, nothing. She could build a multi-million-dollar corporation and become president of the United States. But this is the essence of her true power. You got to let her do that. I don't remember where this is going, but essentially that was the biggest lesson that I learned. I don't remember with the question, but essentially that was a big lesson that I think a lot of guys need to learn, is that when your wife becomes pregnant, fatherhood, that it's not about you anymore. It's completely not about you. You're an auxiliary player, and that there's a time when you can step back in. Look, my son is 3 years old. He's my youngest. I'm just sort of stepping in now. Not that I wasn't there, but all of a sudden I become a character in my son's life. You see, dads, we think, there's so many falsehoods, just based on my experience. We think that, you know, we're so important in the beginning, and we want to be there. And I see dads, they want to hold the bottle, and they want to, but it's like, you know, it's kind of awkward and strange because it's not your nature. It's not a man's nature to be a woman in that way. Mm-hmm. This sounds all very sexist and weird, but this is just based on my experience. But there comes a time now, after about 3 years, once the baby has come, that you step in, and now like the kid even sees you. My daughter didn't even see me for 3 years. She like I'd show up and she'd be like, she's like, it's daddy. It's that guy, like he's trying to take you from me. And you know, all my kids nursed until about the age of 2. So I come and she's like, no, don't take me from my mommy. Right? You know, so it caused a lot of resentment. But that's it. So, but at a certain point, then, when you step back into the picture, you offer a lot of pragmatism, grit. They say in the Bible that the man is the head of the family, right? The head meaning leader, I'm not so sure. If you've been married and there's no leader per se. You're not a head. See, the word is head, not a head. You're not a head of the family. You're the head of the family, meaning what happens is you end up becoming in many ways, you become the logical, the pragmatist, the one that has the grit and the grounding in that sense, the one that is more objective about decisions to be made, because the children and the woman are very much in their experience. Is any of this making sense?
Yeah,
so the head,
absolutely.
When it says the head, it basically means you become the logic of the family. Mm-hmm. And it's not that logic. So we live in a world where logic, the penis rules, because we live in a logical world where everything is about logic. And the spirit world has completely been, the emotional world, the spiritual world is completely like, that doesn't mean anything, get it out of here. Well, it's not that one's better than the other. It's that men have a natural inclination to thinking a particular way and experiencing life in a particular way that is just based on our biology. Mm-hmm. And women do also. So that's when I felt like I've stepped in, when there were like questions that needed to be asked that couldn't be so emotional, that needed a little bit of pragmatism and grit, that I was finally able to contribute to what was going on.
Well, it's like the yin and the yang. It's a balance, balance of energies and balancing each other out. So it makes perfect sense.
Yeah, talking about sexes and the dichotomy, seeming dichotomy between them, and the qualities of male and female energies is a bit difficult because there's so many negative associations with both. Mm-hmm. Being politically correct doesn't always line up with what's somewhat natural. Right.
I agree, and I think, and being politically correct and all that. I mean, I don't know. I think it's either everybody's always trying to be so politically correct that I think it makes it harder for us to really get to the core of things and really express, because I think the only way that you really learn and the only way that we continue to grow as individuals and a society is for us to really explore our own perspectives and not necessarily try to be so correct, because if we're always trying to be so politically correct, how can we form new thought forms and new perspectives and expand? Because this universe is all about expansion. So, yeah. And, okay, so I want to ask you some, just, I don't know, a little bit more surfacey questions.
Sure.
Okay, so when it comes to dating, give me just your perspective. It doesn't have to be politically correct or not. What do you think as a woman, when having different conversations? I have my perspectives on it, but okay, so if a woman, let's say, sleeps with a guy really fast, do you think that has the potential to cut off any real connection? I mean, I know every case, nothing is ever black and white.
Right.
But overall, what do you think? Like, if a woman sleeps with a man too soon, like, let's say, they met or a day or two, do you think that can kind of like mess up the potential to maybe have something more serious or develop into, a real relationship per se?
Well, of course, the question depends, right? There's so many elements there. Mm-hmm. But what I'm going to say, if I'm a woman and I'm talking to another woman, right, girlfriend? I'm going to say it really depends on what kind of guy it is. It really depends on what kind of man it is.
Mm-hmm, I agree.
If this is a man that you're attracted to because of surface particularities, right? Mm-hmm. He talks real smooth. He's really good looking. He's got a lot of money. Whatever it is on the surface, there's going to be a sense of, whether it's his fault or not, you chose him, and there's going to be a sense of narcissism there. And a lot of times, if that's what you sense instantly, or you see this, and you can, if you're in touch with your feelings enough to recognize it, but yet you still want to do it. I mean, he's still sexy. I still just want to have sex with him. Don't expect anything more than the same narcissistic approach that he's taken to his appearance than he's taking towards you. You're just like another designer suit that he's put in his closet. And it's not right or wrong. It's just that understand that that's the game you're playing.
Right.
You're hot and we're having sex. Don't expect anything more than that. Now, if something else does come, well, it's interesting, explore it. But be very aware of what's actually happening. Don't be naive. If, on the other hand, now he could still be gorgeous, but if you feel like in your heart, not so much in your head, because a lot of times sex has become this. Sex has become what I see as opposed to what I feel. Because again, we're so detached from our feelings. But if there's this wow, I feel that there might be some warm feelings here beyond just penis and vagina, then there's a possibility that could really open up to a whole lot more. It's a subjective issue, one by one. You just got to look at it and trust your intuition on it. But every time you open your body, you're opening your soul. You're opening up a piece of your core, your essence, and giving it to that other person. Yeah. This is the difference in sex between men and women. You guys don't get inside us.
Yeah.
You see, we're very closed. That's it. We've got a tiny little hole where stuff comes out, and that's it. You can't penetrate us, but we penetrate you. And when another individual physically and spiritually, because there's energetic exchange, penetrates you, they in a certain way now have a piece of you. They kind of own you a little bit. It's different for men. Do you see how that is?
Yeah, no, I agree.
It's different for men. It's more difficult for a woman to own a man in that way than it is for a man to own a woman in that way. And the reason why I say that is because I would preface it by be very careful about when you're opening your legs. When you open up, you're not just opening your vagina. You're not just opening your body. You're opening your soul, your spirit, to being, for lack of better terms, raped. A piece of you is being taken away.
Mm-hmm. I agree. Yeah, because you're sharing energy. It's an energy space, and every time you're giving that energy, and not only that, but you're also mixing. I also talk to people about being careful. And I think it's a more conscious thing. The more conscious you get, you start looking at sex from a more conscious level. But you're also taking in that person's energy. So whoever you're having sex with, I'm giving you my energy, but then I'm taking all your garbage too. So it's being very careful, mindful of who also you're bringing into your space. But I think it takes a level of consciousness and awareness, at where you're at, depending on each person, because I think everybody lives in a different level.
Yeah, it's a matter of protecting your. I mean, in a lot of religions, they've taken full advantage of these ideas because they've got women dressed in clothing that doesn't allow you to even see their faces to protect their sexuality. When really that's very surface. But the choice that you make to protect yourself is not so much an outward thing more than it is one of those challenges that will help you to grow. That it's a bit of a weakness per se. Of course, I sound horrible saying this, but it's a kind of a weakness that women have, that they're open. And you have to develop a certain strength to close down just a little bit, enough that you can be discerning about what comes in. Your body is more open. Your body's meant to be opened. Men's bodies don't open. So with that vulnerability, women have a vulnerability. There's a certain amount of strength that needs to be built up in your character. It's not about clothing and chastity belts. It's about character. Can you build up this certain quality of character that allows you to be discerning about how you and who you open up to, who you become vulnerable to? And if you find yourself in a situation where you're vulnerable but you're being taken advantage of, and it's an unhealthy situation, for you to keep opening up. Now, there's no judgment. Keep doing whatever you're doing. If you're unhappy with that, now it's not about that person. It's not about him. You can point the finger all you want. Oh, he's a dick. He's a dick. He's a jerk. He's a jerk. Well, you know what? He's a man. The problem is you. You keep avoiding this necessity to build up the virtue associated with saying no. Once you grow that ability to say no, you are not only protecting yourself energetically and physically, but you've also just evolved. That's a quantum leap. Now you're a higher version of yourself. You're a stronger version of yourself now. Congratulations. That was a win for your spirit.
That's awesome. I love it. So I know we've been talking for a while, but I don't know. I think we have some good stuff here, and I really enjoyed talking to you so far. I really appreciate you taking the time to have a candid conversation with me.
My pleasure. It was fun.
Thank you.